channel. I'm back to break down this 9-game slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. I have released multiple MLB packages over there on Patreon, so you can go ahead and check those out. If you're interested, you can get access to my DFS package as well as my MLB betting package, where you get access to all of my tools, such as my hot hitter StatCast data tool, my team hitting data tool, my bullpen data, my power rankings, and my cheat sheet, where I break things down based on my research, and I give you guys my best plays as well as my best plays in each price range. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested. And then I've also released a merch store over there on Teespring, where you can get anything KJK DFS apparel. And then lastly, you can follow me over on Twitter at KJK_DFS. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate today. So we have a 9-gamer, pretty decent sized slate. And as always, the first thing I like to do is go ahead and look at strikeout rate. It's fantasy sports. We get points for strikeouts. So look at the guys that top the slate in strikeout rate. And today we have a guy in Walker Buehler, who comes in with a 28.6% K rate. He has a 28.2% K rate against righties and a 29% K rate against lefties, and he's just consistent across the board. You know, a lot of green. Even his weaknesses are yellow. So he's just an all-around good pitcher. And he gets to take on the Arizona Diamondbacks today, who have been struggling as of late. Lineup's really not looking that great. So that just increases the appeal for Buehler today, and he comes in at a 10-2 price tag on DraftKings. He's a 235 favorite. Vegas really likes him to get the win, so that always helps. And he's the top guy on the slate in strikeout rate. So he's the first guy that I have to mention. And the second guy is right over next to him in this game before in San Diego Padres, Mike Clevenger. Clevenger comes in with a 28% K rate. He's got a 2.92 ERA. Very good across the board as well. He's got a 13.2 swinging strike rate, which actually tops Walker Buehler on this slate, and a 32.4% K rate against righties, and then a 24% K rate against lefties. So he does really excel against right-handed hitting as far as strikeouts are concerned. So we do prefer to target him against right-handed heavy lineups if at all possible. And we're looking at his opponent today in the Colorado Rockies. You know, they do have quite a few lefties, quite a few righties. Kind of a 50-50 split, though, so nothing to get too concerned about. And then when you also mention the fact that they're going into San Diego instead of in Colorado, anytime the Rockies are on the road, we do prefer to target them then because they really excel at home, but on the road they can struggle. So Clevenger, definitely my number 2 option, and his price tag reflects it. He comes in at a 9.7 price tag on DraftKings. Then moving further along, the next guy is the young top prospect in Sixto Sanchez, who's really shown his talent early on. He's got a 26.8% K rate. He's got a 13.9% swinging strike rate. And then the ground ball, the fly ball, the walk rate, the hard hit rate, everything's looking green. Everything's looking very good. The only thing that really stands out, for some strange reason, he only has a 9.7% K rate against right-handed hitting, and he's got a 40% K rate against lefties. So not really punching out any righties, and he's actually given up a lot of slugging against righties, so maybe something to keep an eye on, but we are only dealing with a 19 innings pitch sample size. However, 19 is a lot more than, just like a 6-inning outing. So maybe a trend we can pick up on early and try to take advantage of. So, yeah, Sixto, definitely a guy that you can have interest in. But then, as I had mentioned, with his splits against righties, maybe we can go ahead and target some of these right-handed Atlanta Braves bats once we start breaking down the bats on this slate. So, but Sixto's only at a 6.2 price tag on DraftKings, and with a young talent, with a top prospect and the talent he's displayed, he's definitely an option on the slate for the cheap price range, and maybe something you can try to hop on before other people do if he's going to be low-owned on this slate today. Next guy in K rate is Lance Lynn, taking on the Los Angeles Angels. He's got a 26% K rate, 31.5% K rate against righties, and then a 20.4% K rate against lefties. And Lance Lynn is a guy that really excels against right-handed hitting as far as strikeout, and then the lefties, it does drop down. So that definitely stands out today. When looking at his matchup, taking on the Angels, he does have a pretty right-handed heavy lineup that he's facing. It's actually very right-handed heavy. There's 1, 2, 3 lefties in there, it's looking like. Being that we just went over his numbers, and we know how he profiles out against right-handed and left-handed hitting, that definitely increases the appeal of Lance Lynn today. And anytime he's taking on a right-handed heavy team, that's when I really get interested in that. That is the case today. So Lance Lynn, definitely the next guy to be putting in your lineups. And while we're breaking down all these guys with a top strikeout rate, we do have to look at matchups as well. And we have a couple of guys at the in these early games We have some of the best matchups of the day in Adrian Hauser and Dylan Cease. So we'll break down Dylan Cease first, taking on this Pittsburgh Pirates team. The first thing to mention is that Cease gets to go into Pittsburgh, which is a big ballpark upgrade for him because he usually has to pitch over there in Chicago. And he gets to take on this Pittsburgh Pirates team today. So good matchup, a lot of strikeouts in their lineup. He has a 25.9% K rate against righties. Then against lefties, it drops down to an 18.1. But once again, he has 114 innings pitched sample size, so that's pretty decent size, but he is still kind of breaking his way into the league a little bit. Young kid. However, I think this is a great spot to definitely play him. He has a 165 favorite. He's only 8.7K on DraftKings, and this Pittsburgh Pirates team has been striking out a lot. The only downside I would say is that they do have a lot of lefties in there, and we had seen that he doesn't do as well against lefties, but being that they all have a high strikeout rate, I think we can go ahead and waive that and just go ahead and target him anyways. And then the next guy we're going to want to target has a very good matchup in Adrian Hauser taking on the Detroit Tigers. The Detroit Tigers are bottom in the league in strikeout rate. Really struggle, and when looking at his numbers, we can see that he has a 22.1% K rate overall, but the ground ball and the fly ball stuff's very good. He's very good at staying controlled. Against righties, he has a 62.3% ground ball rate, and then a 23.5% K rate. And then against lefties, it drops down to a 20.7%. So, once again, a guy that excels against right-handed hitters, but against lefties, it's not that he's bad. It's just we do prefer him against righties. And when looking at this Detroit Tigers team, they are rolling out quite a few righties. They have looking like 4 lefties in there, and they're mostly switch hitters. But the rest are all righties, and I definitely think that Hauser is a guy that you can get in your lineups today. And he would be the last pitcher that I'm going to talk about as far as getting in your lineups. So we can transition over to bats that we're going to want to target on today's slate. So for bats, I always, if you're new to the channel, I like to go ahead and short my sheet by Sierra, skill interactive ERA. It's a good way of determining how good a pitcher's been in the past and how good a pitcher will be in the future. And the worst guy on the slate in Sierra today is that in Kyle Wright, taking on the Miami Marlins. He's got a 6.34 Sierra, a 7.52 ERA. He doesn't strike anyone out. He has a walk issue. He has a hard hit rate issue. So a lot of bad stuff going on for Kyle Wright. He's just really been struggling. Against righties, it's really not good. And then against lefties, it's very, very, very bad. So we can definitely stack these Miami Marlins today. And when looking at the top candidates for us to get in our lineups, definitely at the top of the lineup, I would say this 1 through 5 range is probably my favorite. But then you got Jazz Chisholm at the bottom of the order, who's a top prospect that just came up. Lewin Diaz, has a little bit of pop, but I don't know. I would try to stick to the 1 through 5 range. I would say Dickerson, Marte, Cooper, Matt Joyce, and Brian Anderson, because they're already kind of cheap as is outside of Starling Marte, and I think you can fit in that stack and still get in some pitching that you like. So definitely would prioritize the top of the lineup. However, with that being said, we had already gone over Kyle Wright's numbers, not good at all. So if you want to throw in the bottom of the lineup to be really extra contrarian, I wouldn't fault you for doing it, and I understand. Wright's numbers have not been good. Next on the list is that in Chichi Gonzalez. Chichi Gonzalez also very, very bad. He doesn't strike anyone out. He doesn't get any swinging strikes. Just not a good pitcher overall. Against righties, he really struggles. He has a lot of orange going on there. And then against lefties, it gets even worse. He has a 5.16 slugging to lefties, not good. And then the K and the walk rate's also very terrible. So Kyle Wright and Chichi Gonzalez are very similar as far as being bad and us wanting to target them on today's slate. So, scrolling further along, we can see that the San Diego Padres have a 5.67 implied run total. And the top candidates are going to be, at the top of the lineup, of course, Trent Grisham, Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado. But then there's also some cheaper guys down towards the bottom of the order that can slug right-handed pitching and, that are actually left-handed hitters. And we had discussed Chichi Gonzalez's splits. He does really struggle against left-handed hitting. So guys like Drake Cronenworth, Jason Castro, and Jurickson Profar are definitely at the top of my list. And then, of course, Mitch Moreland in the 4th spot is a big-time play today because he's got a ton of power against right-handed pitching. And with Chichi splits, definitely going to have a lot of interest in Mitch Moreland. So make sure you're stacking up those Padres today in an absolute great spot. And then we have next John Means of the Baltimore Orioles taking on the New York Mets. And Means really struggles against right-handed hitting. The ground ball and the fly ball rate really stand out. They're dark red on my sheet, which is just, making it blatantly obvious that he's just really bad in the fly ball and the ground ball category against righties. And then the same thing applies to lefties. However, his hard contact, his WOBA, and his slugging is a lot better. So, not quite as appealing. We do prefer to target the right-handed bats that can slug some left-handed pitching. And the New York Mets definitely have some options today that fall into that category, and they have a 5.72 implied run total. So Vegas is liking them a lot as well. So, top options are J.D. Davis, Todd Frazier, Pete Alonso, Wilson Ramos, Marisnick, and Rosario. However, he's not good against lefties, so either, he's better, but the ground ball and the fly ball stuff's still not good. So we can definitely throw in a Conforto and a Robinson Cano to finish out our stacks. And then, of course, Jeff McNeil is in the one spot, so you always got to have interest in a leadoff hitter that you're stacking up. But I think I really like this 4 through 8 range probably. Todd Frazier, Cano, Pete Alonso, and Wilson Ramos. That would probably be my top option. And then if I'm dropping one, maybe just drop Cano and throw in J.D. Davis and the other righty to finish off your stack. But let's be honest, Means not looking good, and then the Baltimore bullpen isn't the greatest either. So you can really throw in anyone that works positionally wise and stack wise. It's daily fantasy sports. We do have a salary cap, and we do have positions that we have to fill out. So gotta like these New York Mets today. Definitely the next option as far as our bats are concerned. And then, Dylan Cease is next on the slate as far as being bad in Sierra, but I had already explained I have interest in actually playing him today, so I don't think he's a spot that you're going to want to go. I don't really have interest in targeting Michael Wacha as either. So I would say the next spot that you might want to look into is maybe some, let's break down the Chicago Cubs team first, and then we'll move on to the Dodgers, because the Dodgers are definitely in another good spot. But the Chicago Cubbies get to take on Tyler Mahle. And then, I said I was going to have interest, and I look at the weather, and it looks like they're playing in Chicago at Wrigley Field, which if you haven't tuned into my other videos, I always try to express that Wrigley Field is the field that's most impacted by wind in the MLB. The way the stadium's built in Chicago, and, the Windy City, as I like to call it, when the wind's blowing in, it's a very big deal, and the wind's blowing out, it's a very big deal. So right now it's looking like the wind's blowing in at 17 miles an hour. So I was going to go ahead and give you some of these bats to like, but I don't really think I'm going to even break that down now because, that's a big factor. 17-mile-an-hour winds, I don't really think I'm going to want to be playing these guys. So weather is going to kind of scratch that spot off our checklist today. So the next spot I would go would be these LA Dodgers taking on Luke Weaver. And when looking at Luke Weaver's numbers, you can see he has a 4.27 Sierra, not good. Across the board, he's very underwhelming, not the greatest. And then against righties, bad, and lefties, not any better, and actually worse. He has a 4.55 slugging against the lefties. And, this Dodgers lineup is just absolutely stacked with studs up and down. So these Dodgers are definitely in a good spot today. The only thing is you will pay for them, the 1 through 4 range. They're all priced up. Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, Max Muncy, and Cody Bellinger, but they're priced up for good reason. So if we're able to, if you want to go ahead and play some cheaper pitching options and jam those guys in, they definitely provide you a ton of upside. But we also do have the bottom of the order, as I always mention, when a team has a high implied run total. And the bottom of the order is a little cheaper. You can go ahead and stack up the bottom of the order, get some exposure to the high run total, and not have to pay all these expensive price tags, such as the ones we'd have to pay for these guys at the top of the order. So, interested in these guys 1 through 9, honestly, just because this team's stacked. And, we would prefer the 1 through 4, but A.J. Pollock, Will Smith, Gavin Lux, Chris Taylor, and Edwin Rios, I think, are all great options as well, because it's not like they're bad bats. They just happen to play for the Los Angeles Dodgers, who have studs at the top of the order. So they hit the bottom, but they can all slug as well. So definitely have some interest in these Dodgers today. And then the last spot, I think I pretty much broke down all my favorite spots, but we do have to figure out some splits. I always like to look at some splits and figure out guys that really struggle in the splits category. And while we have gone over it, the last thing that I can mention to be contrarian is actually against the guy that I had recommended already well, no, let's go ahead. Not a guy against it. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong guy on my sheet. We got Joe Musgrove here. This is what I'm trying to get at. Joe Musgrove, very effective against right-handed hitting, but against lefties, he's kind of been struggling. He's a 471 slugging, not really good, below average. And when looking at this Chicago White Sox lineup, they are a lineup that's notoriously right-handed heavy. So as a stack, I don't necessarily like them. But one guy that I do want to mention, and one reason why I bring up the splits, is Johan Mankata. In the 2 spot in this lineup, he's a guy that crushes right-handed pitching, and then his teammate in Yasmani Grandal. So while it's not a traditional stack, I did want to mention Musgrove's splits, and I do think that those 2 guys are guys to have interest in. And that's the last thing I'd have to bring up as far as bats are concerned, because Musgrove does struggle a little bit against lefties. And Johan Mankata really excels from the left-handed side of the plate. Even though he's a switch hitter, he really excels from the left-handed side of the plate. He really excels against right-handed pitching, and I do think that he's a guy that you could have interest in today. So let's go ahead and give you guys a quick little brief overview of what I've gone over today. My interest on this slate, Dylan Cease taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates, I think is a great pitching option. I like him today. I like Adrian Hauser as a pitching option at AK on DraftKings, taking on the Detroit Tigers. I think Sixto Sanchez is a cheap option you can take a chance on because he's a top prospect and he can go out there and give you some good upside. These New York Mets are definitely a team that have a lot of interest in taking on John Means. I like them a lot today. Lance Lynn, I had mentioned his strikeout capabilities against right-handed hitting, and he gets to take on the Los Angeles Angels, who look like a very right-handed heavy lineup today. So you got to have a ton of interest in Lance Lynn. Let's see. The Chicago Cubs Cincinnati Reds game is a spot I would have interest in for bats, but with the wind blowing in that rate, I'm just going to go ahead and scratch it off my list because that's extreme winds and that's a problem in Wrigley. Mike Clevenger, definitely a pitcher you can have interest in today. And then I like the San Diego Padres a lot, most notably the left-handed hitters, Mitch Moreland, Jake Cronenworth, Jason Castro. These Dodgers, you got to have interest in up and down, taking on Luke Weaver. You can really toss in anyone you want because they're that good of a lineup. Just figure out who fits for salary and toss them in. We would prefer the 1 through 4 range, obviously, but they do come with hefty price tags. And then Walker Buehler pitching against these Arizona Diamondbacks. I had mentioned he's the top strikeout pitcher on the slate. You could have interest in him. And that's about where my breakdown of the slate today. I did get some feedback on the last video as far as my home run call of the day. I had been doing a segment where I give you guys my home run call of the day and kind of faded out. And I want to bring it back because I got some feedback that people were really missing that. So I was leading off there at 7-13. I got my last one wrong, so I'm 7 for 14. My home run calls, I'm at 50% right clip, and I try to give you guys some elite hitters, and then as well as some more sneaky plays. And today, my home run call of the day is going to be against Chichi Gonzalez. I mentioned his struggles against left-handed hitting, and I think that Mitch Moreland is going to hit a home run today. Mitch Moreland is my home run call of the day. Like these lefties a lot, like Mitch Moreland. Make sure you get him in your lineup. And that is what I will sign off with. If you enjoyed the content, you'll be tuning in for future videos. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss new videos when I release them. You can follow me over on Twitter at KJK_DFS for updates whenever possible. And that's about all for me today. I wish you guys all the best of luck tonight, and have a good one.